Family, this is a sunny day. What could be better than a free hot lunch? Let you know that on Saturday, December 13th, from noon to 2, you can actually get a free hot lunch. There is such a thing as a free lunch, and it's at the Greater Galilee Community Center. It's 2432 North Titonia Avenue, condo number 2. That's 2432 North Titonia Avenue, condo 2. And this building is north of the Greater Galilee Missionary Baptist Church. And the free lunch will last as long as the supply is there, right? The event is being brought to you by The Gathering at the Crossroads and WNOV The Voice. So eat up. Happy Saturday, and enjoy your free lunch. I think it's going to be hot as well. So, all right. With that announcement being made, then let's get it on. So today we have a special guest. I'm going to see if I can get the name right. So Patrick Mcilheran, right?
Perfect.
Okay. Oof, okay. That was a lot of letters going on there, right? So Patrick is from the Badger Institute. We're going to talk a little bit today about him, about the Badger Institute, and some of the work that they're doing. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Will. Much appreciated.
Have you been to WNOV before?
I have not.
Okay, well, welcome to the station.
Driven past and said, "Wow, that's where the place is."
Okay,
and I've never been inside.
Glad to have you and all. And so, are you originally from Milwaukee, or are you?
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Racine County.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, all right. What part of Racine County?
Western Racine County, around Waterford.
That's a whole different place over there.
It is.
Okay, all right. And so, you were just mentioning to me about moving back to the States. So obviously, you had been gone for some period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, mm-hmm. And so, what took you out of the state?
Well, okay, I grew up here, went to college in Minnesota, worked at newspapers around Minnesota and Wisconsin, and newspapers were doing fine for many years. Along about the time that the Great Recession hit, Ron Johnson got elected to the Senate. Mutual friend put us in touch, and the senator said, "Hey, you ever thought about working for a senator?" And I said, "I never had, but now I will." And so I went and worked for him for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Drew spreadsheets and graphs.
Well, were you out in D.C.
I was.
Doing the work? All right. Well, that's an entirely different place.
Holy buckets.
Yeah, just the affordability. Most people are talking about affordability around the country, but affordability's been non-existent in D.C.
It was pretty spooky. We just kept heading farther out until the prices started to make sense.
Yeah.
Wound up living halfway to Richmond.
Wow. The commute had to be incredible.
The commute was awful.
Wow. Did you enjoy working in D.C.?
Oh, yeah. It was really challenging. It's it's a neat place in that you got a whole lot of people together talking about public policy, which is a sort of a neat thing. My previous work had been as a newspaper guy. I'd been a reporter, editor, wrote a column for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel for about 7 years.
Wow.
And there you're obviously writing about public policy.
Mm-hmm.
You get to DC and it's you're doing the same thing. You're looking into it in greater depth and delivering your thoughts and summaries and that sort of thing to somebody who can actually, if things go right, change it.
Yeah. So there are only 100 senators. So what
that's
was it
about
like?
Enough.
Yeah. Well, I kind of agree with you. But what's it like being able to work, in a country of 330 million Americans, the idea of 1 out of 100, being able to work for them while the Senate is, actively engaged. What's that like?
Here's the thing, it may be different with other senators. I worked for exactly one. I've got a sample size of one here.
Mm-hmm.
Ron had previously been in business, built a company up twice, and I think there are others in the Senate who they come from sort of an executive position where they're used to, well, here's how it's going to be, and I'll say this is how it will be, and there it will be.
Mm-hmm.
They get to the Senate, and they're one against 99 other kings.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to listen to each other. What they can do is persuade each other. It's a different skill set. It's fascinating. I think Ron has done an outstanding job at figuring out how to make that work. But it is a different sort of skill set. You're having to come up with arguments that work
And persuade someone else.
and persuade somebody else. And when you can't persuade them or your boss is unable to, then, well, you're going to have to figure out a new way of doing it. Figure out something else to say, some other way to look at the facts that actually do bring somebody around to your view.
Yeah, no. If there were someone listening to this show who really wanted to work in DC, what was the thing that was most that you didn't expect about the experience?
I did not expect how young the staff of the U.S. Senate is. I mean, there are a lot of okay. I did well in school, but holy buckets, I was. There were a lot of very smart people who were way more diligent than I was, had much shinier degrees from much shinier colleges, and they were all about 20 years younger than me.
Wow.
It was a shocker. Now, to be honest, I'll let you in a little secret. Ron hires older staff, and he said as much that he prefers people with some life experience. It's just a different way of looking at things. He's coming at it from outside of politics, but you do wind up with a lot of people advising the Congress who not sure that they've had a lot of time out of college. A lot of them have multiple degrees. That's how they're climbing up the ladder. But
Yeah.
Have you had kids yet? Have the kids gone to high school?
How life really works.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
If they're good at what they do, and here again, I'm talking about staff, not to mention the legislators. If they're good at what they do, they know that what they're lacking there, and they have to listen to people, especially constituents.
Wow. So okay, so you grew up here, and you've got you came straight out of school to become a journalist.
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Got
so
a teeny tiny paper.
okay, and so you started off as a journalist. You end up going into a public service office
Mhm.
and all. How did what you studied get you prepared for where you ended up? I mean, what about your experience? What about your education got you ready for what you then did? Did you go for journalism? Were you ready for
Well, I did.
public policy?
I went and got a bachelor's degree in journalism, which mostly was. I mean, to be honest, there's not a lot of journalism content in it. It's you take a couple of minors, you study business, you study political science, that sort of thing. A lot of what college will prepare you for there is just you do a lot of writing because bluntly, if you're going to do journalism, that's what it consists of. It consists of listening to people, accurately hearing what they're saying, and then relating it. I was with newspapers, so it's writing. You're doing a lot of writing every day.
And you're not the only person, locally who has gone and come from journalism into public policy. We see it, I think, seems fairly often that we'll see people who have been in journalism that will end up in public policy or ending up in one of these offices.
It does. It happens, and I think that happens because some of the skills that let you succeed at journalism, that get you by in that world, are those of let's look at evidence, let's find something out, let's figure out what the question is people want an answer to, and then figure out how to get the answer, and have that answer be accurate and related in a way that gets the information across in a short time.
No, I think it's interesting because a lot of the argument we're having in the country these days is what is the slant in the article, right? And so people have come to a place where either if you like what they're saying, then you trust that source. If you don't like what they're saying, you don't trust that source anymore. A lot of, I think the way that people talk about Walter Cronkite or the way that news used to be presented, whether it's true or not, there's this vision of it was unbiased, and that everything else from that point now is biased or slanted in some way. What was your experience?
I don't know that that's necessarily true, that there was ever a time
Mm-hmm.
when news was unbiased. Uh, in fact, okay, so in the old building where Journal Sentinel used to be, they're no longer there. They've
Mm-hmm.
moved to newer digs, but there was a library. I don't know that anyone ever actually picked a lot of things out of the bookshelf that was in the editorial board room, which had been, occasionally you go there when some guest is coming, some newsmaker guest, and okay, he's going to talk, and a bunch of you can come and listen to him. They had bookshelves there, decorative ones, and I don't think they'd been touched since the 1970s, but there were a couple of books on there that were big think piece books from the 1970s about, is the media slanted? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, okay, yeah, there was a question back then too, because it's an eternal question.
Right.
Is the person who you are trusting to tell you how things are, is that person's perspective taking into account everything you think is important or not? And I mean, it has always been that way. I think what we're able to see now, because there are more sources, the internet has done this remarkable thing about letting us reach and read more outlets, more voices from more places,
And they're not all equal.
and they're not all equal. And you have to actually, as a consumer of news, pay attention to that, right? What is this person? This person's telling me things. How do we know? How do we know that he's got it right?
Mhm.
Um,
I think being able to question, you know, is this accurate, right?
mhm.
Does this sound right to me? Are they really, you talked about finding the evidence, and so it's one of the reasons I bring it up is because so often we're arguing, and we're actually arguing past each other because I don't accept your source, you don't accept my source, therefore we don't really have to debate the actual issue. We're just really debating whether or not yours is real or mine is real, or fake being, the operative word these days.
Now here's where I'm gonna dive in on my current work, which is
Hmm.
this Badger Institute. It's what you'd call a think tank, a policy research organization. We're nonprofit, and we try to figure out, we try to find smart people who can actually opine with some intelligence on problems facing Wisconsin, come up with
Hmm.
some solutions. Been doing that for 38 years, long before I got there. I used to operate under the name the Wisconsin Policy Research Institute, which that's a mouthful. And if you
Hmm.
shorten it to WPRI, it sounds like they're going to have tote bags at the fund drive. But so it rebranded as Badger Institute a few years ago, named after, of course, the animal that's on top of the state seal on the flag. Uh, the symbol of the miners who showed up well before this was a state and were digging for lead of all things. Well, that's kind of the idea of what we're doing. We're digging to find valuable things underground, bring them to light, show everybody. What we try to do is, I mean, obviously we're I guess you'd say we're conservative.
Hmm.
We're center right. We believe in free markets, prosperity, free people. So we're coming in with our priors, but we're open about that. We're
Hmm.
saying that it should be clear when you read something from us that that's the perspective we're coming from. Once you understand that, we're also coming with the understanding that we have to prove it. We have to bring the numbers. Uh, and maybe you might argue with the numbers, but we're trying to
Yeah.
find them from sources that people will say, okay, at least the numbers are correct. The implication, what those numbers lead you to in terms of what Wisconsin should do, we'll argue about that. But I mean, that's a basis for this, for getting past the mistrust. Let's at least make sure we're measuring accurately and using numbers honestly. I think
Yeah.
that's a lesson that works for everybody.
It's exactly why I wanted to ask you about your background and about that experience in journalism versus, because I think so often again we tend to be dismissive of that which we don't already buy into. I think um, there was a. It feels like there was a time when the evidence was the evidence, and we could sort of debate based on the evidence. it seems to me like we've moved into a phase now where we can completely reject the facts because they don't fit the narrative that we want. At times people just simply check out of the conversation. It's why I wanted to have you come over, because I think that there are some examples of the kind of research that you've been doing. So I know we're this is sort of esoteric conversation about, oh, it's public policy and it's journalism, etc. There's some very grassroots, real world things that you will have investigated that have real meaning for people here in Milwaukee. So, for instance, I know you have recently done a study on public transportation, and I want to get into that a little bit. But before we get there, just why? What's the role of a think tank here in Wisconsin? Badger Institute's putting out these studies about a variety of different things. How are you deciding what you're going to research? Who's doing that? How is the organization supported? Just so people have a sense of, again, where you're coming from.
We're supported by donors, including thousands of small dollar people who just they had a successful career running a shop on the corner, that sort of thing, and they
Mhm.
decide that, well, we want a more sensible free Wisconsin, so they're going to donate some bucks.
Mhm.
We don't take government money, never have, never will.
Okay.
That steers you in a certain direction, and we don't want to go there.
Mhm.
Uh, what we decide on what to do, we're broad spectrum. If it's a public policy issue in Wisconsin, we'll probably at some point in our past, maybe in our future, we'll be taking a look at it. The big ones for us, a perennial one, has been education.
Mhm.
We've been making the case that it's a deeply held conviction. Both I walked in with this, and it was a long time belief of the organization that you know parents are the people who know best what their children need,
Yeah.
and that includes on education.
Mhm.
Parents need to be given the power to pick the education that their kids need. We've been a supporter of school choice since day one, and day one was a long time ago in
Mhm.
Wisconsin. The Milwaukee Parental Choice Program was born about the same time as
Right.
the organization was, and proud to have been with that ever since. And making the explanation as to, well, here's why it works. Here's why it works from a moral standpoint, from a practical, better results standpoint, and we've got that. We've got the
Mhm.
numbers on why it's a better, why it's a better fiscal matter for Wisconsin. Because let's be blunt, the reason that the rest of Wisconsin saw the need to bring about space for school choice in Milwaukee was because the rest of Wisconsin said a lot of kids in Milwaukee were exposed to a school district that wasn't working very
Mhm.
well, wasn't working well for them. And how is it good for the state if the biggest city in that state has kids who aren't learning to the best of their ability?
Yeah. I just love the fact that getting someone like Governor Tommy Thompson together with Representative Polly Williams, and figuring out how do we give opportunity to all kids,
Hmm.
regardless of their income, ensuring that they had choice, that they had options available. And to me, that's an important principle by itself. Just making sure that people have options and aren't restricted just because they don't have the money to do so.
It's hugely important. I mean, what makes a kid thrive is not just, learning, but the love that comes from a mother, the love that comes from a family.
Hmm.
You marry those two things with school choice, and it's beautiful. This
Yeah.
is children's futures, and it's important. And you hear this every time you talk to. We did a series of videos a couple of years ago, just when the discussion was taking place in the legislature about whether to expand the amount of money that followed each kid to a
Mhm.
school. Talked to parents. We interviewed them. There was one particular set of guys who were sending their fathers who were sending their sons to Kingdom Prep. It's a choice school. It's just over the municipal line in Wauwatosa, kind of well positioned on for a lot of people from the west side and northwest side to get to. And these fathers were just talking about the worry they had for 8 hours a day. Their sons, these are teenage boys, right?
Mhm.
Their sons were going to get sent to a school. They don't know what the environment was going to be for them, like in, say, I don't know, Vincent or Madison.
Mhm.
And they worried. They worried about what was going to become of their sons. What would their kids learn, not just from the school, but from everybody around them, from the environment? They wanted to make sure that there was an environment that would raise their children into men.
Wow. Well, we're going to pick this up. I want to have people hear more about what those fathers were concerned about right after this break. We are back. We're talking to Patrick Mcilheran. I cannot believe I've been able to pronounce this name twice now. Two for two. So yeah, and given the spelling, if you had not tutored me on this name, I would never have been able to get it.
It's meant to throw off invaders, I think.
Yeah, I think absolutely, man. So we were just talking before the break. Badger Institute, where you work currently, is a think tank. Really looks at Wisconsin issues, and I think a number of the issues really have importance for Milwaukee. So we talked a little bit about education beforehand, and you were just mentioning before the break about fathers who are very worried about the environment their kids would be in, their young men were going to be in. And so you were just telling us a little bit about what the fathers were thinking before we went on break.
Well, these particular fathers had found a school that worked for their kids. It's this all boys, mostly Lutheran background, but most of the students there aren't Lutheran. It has a particular Christian vibe. I think it's Lutheran, but a Christian vibe to it, and no one makes them go. They chose it, and that's the beauty of school choice, is that it's allowing a lot of different Milwaukeeans, a lot of different Milwaukee families, a lot of different Wisconsin families who have different needs for their different kids, different preferences on what shape education takes to find an education that works for them. This is how we all get along. It's a beautiful way of allowing a state where people differ. How do we all live together? Well, we acknowledge that with giving them options, giving them choices. That's one of them.
Yeah. No, so we also were talking, sometimes the breaks are the best part, right? So we were just talking also about housing, and I'm really intrigued to know, what you've looked at in terms of housing issues, and what are some of the solutions that Badger Institute thinks are out here.
Well, this is an issue we've been paying attention to for about the last year, doing a project on, in part, looking at some of the data that underlies it. Very scary figures. I mean, Wisconsin's cities, and not just Milwaukee and Madison. This is happening at a lot of places across the state. Housing prices have shot upward, turned very sharply upward during the inflation of a few years back, and it's not changed. And in part, it's because as it turns out, we've looked at the policy on this. It's getting hard to build a house.
Right.
If you've got a place where population's growing, and for the most part, Wisconsin is, and you can't build new houses, which you literally can't in a lot of places. For instance, we did a story about Door County, Sturgeon Bay, the places north of that. You need ambulance drivers up there. You need paramedics. You need firemen.
It's what we would sometimes refer to as workforce housing. Make sure the workforce can actually live in the community it's serving.
But if the houses all, it's an expensive area.
Yeah.
So you've got paramedics driving in from Appleton. How do you change that in terms of local policy? How do you? We found a community near Green Bay, Hobart, where they've figured out in some important ways how to speed up the permitting process.
Well, just before we get to those parts, just for the audience to know, the average, I know Byron's over in that corner, but I won't inflict him too badly. But you guys, what do you think the average cost of a house is now in Wisconsin? The average house.
Like one of these right around here?
The average house in the entire state. What do you think the average cost of a house is to buy now?
Cost about 100.
Oh, my goodness. You know what? See, and this is the difference about like our immediate area. The average cost of a house now in the state of Wisconsin is about $350,000. $350,000. And that's one of the conversations we've been having all over the place is, how is anybody supposed to be able to buy a house when the average is that high? Right? And that's not to build a house, because it's so difficult to build a house now. And so, this market, a lot of young people, I don't know, Byron, you got the kind of change, that you're ready to buy a $350,000 house?
Yeah, somewhere around here.
Some year around here, right? So that's, I think it's the stress that it's putting on people that, they can't afford housing. The federal government says that you shouldn't be spending more than about 30% or so on housing. It Otherwise you're becoming very house rich and very cash poor, right?
Right.
Too much house. Well, for a lot of people, just finding a home, you said you had to actually go look, several counties out in order to find a home because of the housing stock. And it's largely because we don't build enough houses. The population grows slowly, partly growing slowly because there's no place to put people. And then on top of it, to be able to build, we've gotten so out of hand about how difficult it is.
And the thing is, it's not as if we're the San Francisco Bay Area where there really is no room to put people. They have mountains, they have an ocean there, they got water. You can't do a house there.
Yeah.
We got a lot of cornfields, we got a lot of bean fields. So if push comes to shove, yeah, you can build new things. One story we found, because I mean, that's the thing. We're Badger Institute's a lot of old journalists, so we tell stories. It's how we
Okay.
understand things. We hire academics when we want a paper done, but we were hunting around and finding that. So up in Sheboygan, Sheboygan Falls area, a lot of employers just can't get a hold of enough people, and the staff that people they're hiring are saying the same thing. They can't afford a house. Why don't you just build, starter houses?
Yep.
Well, they did.
Yeah.
It took a lot of shoving and a lot of well, let's change the zoning here to allow it.
Yeah.
To allow it, and the subdivision's going up. It's nice. It looks a lot like sort of where my grandparents lived in eastern West Dallas. Not very big, but it's a nice house. It'll
a
do the
starter
trick.
home.
Right. Why don't you have more of that across the state?
Yeah.
And so we've looked at that. A lot of regulations done at the local level that get in the way.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I have talked to people around the state about is we have so many legacy communities that have so much infill opportunity. So when we talk about, those $100,000 houses and the ability to have, families go in, think about, one of the huge expenses around the state is getting the infrastructure. You got to have water, sewer, electrical, all that's got to be brought to the parcel. Well, places like Milwaukee, Superior, Beloit, Racine, Kenosha, right? It's already been done. And yet the housing stock's so old in many cases that they've torn the houses down. Well, they didn't tear out the water. They didn't tear out the sewer. They didn't tear out the electrical. That stuff's already there. So building infill housing, right? Taking those lots where houses used to be and now building, newer properties and doing them at scale, right? So it's not like I'm building one house, but I'm building, 40 in this, 4-block area, so that we're putting, those opportunities back. It's another way to get scale so that a developer can come in and build without having it be, so cost prohibitive, right? Because at least they can buy all the material for the 40 houses that are going to go over the 4-block area, and they can get a crew that can be working on all of these and staging them. It's a lot less expensive, because I've heard communities where they're building brand new housing in places like Waukesha, Jefferson, etc. Some of those lots, it's $50,000, $60,000 just to bring the water and the sewer and the electrical out there to them. So if you're starting out, we're talking about a house here in Milwaukee in the north side, could be $100,000. Well, it's almost $100,000 just to put the infrastructure in for a new home in some of these other counties. We're not taking advantage of how we rebuild these communities and get people to own in the community rather than just renting.
And a lot of what governs whether somebody can do that, whether somebody can make the project pencil out, depends on local zoning regulations, local permissions. You have you have all the permits necessary to build. And I think that's the sort of thing that it's kind of dull work, but if Wisconsin's serious about controlling that affordability, that housing question, I mean, that's the biggest expense people have.
Right. It's also the greatest wealth generator. Home ownership has led to intergenerational wealth building for families. And so when you don't have the ability to buy a home, you also don't have the ability to pass that on to your kids, to your grandkids. You don't have the money that can come from that home to take care of you in your old age when you might end up needing assisted care, etc. So it really harms communities like Milwaukee, where as fewer people own homes, there's fewer access to that wealth as well.
It is one of the remarkable things about Milwaukee, long has been, is that it's a city heavily of houses. I mean, there are people who are going to want an apartment. That's dandy. That serves their needs. Good. That should be we should be allowing that too, allowing builders to put up apartments, allowing builders to rehab what exists.
Yeah.
But to be honest, was a beautiful thing about the Milwaukee area is that it's a lot of houses, and that can be a drawing card. That can be a good thing that's what people want. You talk about housing. Well, most people, that's a house. They want
having
a house.
a stake in the community, right?
Right.
That you own something here, I think brings pride for folks to feel like, hey, it's my neighborhood. There's a lot more investment in getting to know your neighbors when you know they bought a house, you bought a house, you're both in this together about your neighborhood, and having a block party with the folks, and it's not different people every time you have it. It's that you've got a relationship with folks in the neighborhood. They're watching out for you, you're watching out for them. That's a big difference. Even the style of homes, we're so used to it being the single family or the duplex or the quads that are here. But a lot of times I will talk to other communities about what sometimes we refer to as missing middle, row houses, right? So you think about like out in Philly and some of these places where they're all adjacent, they all share a wall, right? And they're built across, but they take up a whole block, right? We don't build like that here. And yet some of these blocks, we've got, virtually the whole side that can be rebuilt, and so being able to put in some of that, some of those row houses, so people have a different style of home that they can come into. Not everybody's looking to mow a lawn. I will say, I have a lawn right now. I don't prefer to have to be the one mowing that lawn, right? I would gladly take a row
spared
house.
that for a couple of months.
There you go. Oh yeah, exactly. The shoveling has taken up all my time now, right? So, but yeah, I think there's just so many different opportunities, and it's also the case. We have so many seniors in our community, and again, it's so many of these communities where, as people are aging in place, who can't necessarily care for themselves and for the home the same way they did back when they were of working age, etc. We also haven't built enough senior living places for folks to be able to have quality, safe, affordable housing so that they can move out of that house, and so that a family, with kids, maybe Byron, can move into one of those homes with that child, and be able to start building a life there in that community as well. So there's a whole housing cycle, and because we haven't built enough, there's nowhere to move to.
Here's the thing, though. Builders want to build. People want to buy the things that they build.
Right.
Part of what we have to do is find the points where government gets in the way between that happy transaction.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, it costs a lot of money, so somebody's gonna have to lend it. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of people wanting to lend money. They advertise on the radio all the time.
Right.
Let's find where regulations stand in the way of that. And
you're talking about things like we talk about things like the setback, right? So you buy a lot. Well, you have to be so far back into the lot. You can't just build. In the old days, they could come right up to the sidewalk. You can't build like that anymore. So you have to push it back. You can't build too close to your neighbor. So that has to be a setback as well. So there are all these provisions. They tell you it's your land, but there's only so much of that land you can build on. Is it a buildable lot? Is it a large enough lot to be buildable? There are all these sorts of things that the city can tell you when and how you can build.
New residential development in the past, I'm going to struggle to get the details here. We had a paper on this. New residential development in Wisconsin last a couple of decades has averaged about 3 units per acre. Uh, whereas if you got like Eastern West Dallas, older parts of Appleton, that sort of thing, we're not talking. This is not like row houses in Philly.
Yeah.
This is a house with a yard in it.
Mhm.
That's about 6 houses per acre.
Yeah.
You can do that, and it looks nice. And suddenly you've got, because you're when you're buying a house, you're buying in part the sidewalk, you're buying the plumbing in the
Yep.
street.
Yep.
So you're paying for a lot less of that.
Mhm.
That makes a huge difference on
Right.
costs.
Right.
There are some places that are figuring out how to do this. Jackson has been adding some houses, Admirable Way. This can be done.
Right. But we are building awfully slowly.
Yes, we
Right.
are.
And it's not keeping pace. So we could bring more people into the state. We've got jobs, et cetera. But if there's no place to put them, again, my understanding is on a house of $300,000, that a third of that house, 100,000 out of the 300,000 is just regulation, just administrative issues.
There are a lot of estimates on that, but they're all kind of frightening in that way. That's in the ballpark.
So just thinking about that.
And that winds up being something of a dead loss.
Right, absolutely. So being able to get the administrative issues trimmed is a way for us to get housing back going. I think the city is actually backed off of some of these issues in the infill kinds of things. So again, you go into some of these neighborhoods and you can see all the time where they've torn a house down here. They've torn a house down over there. They're going to tear down these over. Being able to map those out and being able to say to developers, and I know we helped on a project like this where the city wanted to rebuild 150 houses. Some of them were just lots because they'd already been torn down. Others were, in danger of being torn down because the house had been dilapidated. Again, one of these cases where maybe somebody's passed away, the ownership's questionable. It finally comes to the city for taxes, but it's been left for some while, right? It's needs some love. And what they did was to put together multiple developers, multiple builders who would go in, buy the property basically for $1 from the city, and then put in the investment that was needed, get it back up to speed. So people like Byron, I'm going to bring you into home ownership, my man. We're just going to manifest it, right?
I told you I got 300 sitting to the side.
Those $300 or $300,000? That's the question, right? So no, we want to make sure you and your child get a chance to enjoy that house, right? But you also have looked at things like public transportation, and this one. Well, before we finish with the housing, it just drives me crazy that we have a $4 billion agency, Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, $4 billion agency. The agency does not get tax money, doesn't have to. Unfortunately, the legislature's been giving them money, but they have $4 billion. And all they have to do is work with low to moderate income people around the state to do two things. One, to either get them a quality, safe, affordable rental unit or home ownership. And they can help with getting people a backing for their mortgage. So if your bank works with WIDA, then WIDA will actually essentially bankroll that mortgage. They'll help with the bank. So if you're maybe moderate credit, maybe marginal credit, this helps improve your situation. They can actually also, for veterans and others, help buy down the cost of the interest rate. Because a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't want to buy a house with this interest rate, especially when it used to be 2%, of late. So paying 7 or more is not exactly what people want to be able to do. Well, WIDA can actually back those loans, and yet we're not seeing a lot of effort from WIDA to do it, right? So there's not a lot of activity, and it's not a lot of activity around the state. Even when I worked there, there were whole counties around the state that didn't have any WIDA loans. And that was not to say people didn't want to buy a home. It wasn't to say that they didn't fit the income level, right? And then, you mentioned about the ambulance driver or other folks. There's so many of other people who maybe make a little bit more, but in this economy, they're not going to be able to still afford a home either. Getting backing from WIDA, I'd love to see them do vastly more to help, and we don't have to, as taxpayers, participate in that. That's just something that they can do through their own fees, and I would love to see them do much more.
And you hit on something big there. I mean, if we are going to say that the only way to fix housing, to make housing affordable, is to scrape up a lot of taxpayer money and throw it at the no, then that's not going to happen. It will make housing much more expensive for everybody.
Right.
You're going to do a spiral there. We
Mhm.
don't have to.
Right.
That's the point. If you look at ways in which the state is making housing more expensive, well, that's your first target.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our very first target right now is a break, right? And we'll come right after this. All right. We have been talking with Patrick Mcilheran. 3 times, man. It's getting harder though. I don't know. I'm getting worse.
Oh, it's sticky.
Okay. All right. So from the Badger Institute, and we've been talking about some of these real life issues of how sometimes government can get in the way, right? In creating so many rules, it can make things more expensive and harder for people to do, like getting the housing rebuilt in some of our communities. And so we were talking during the break about how do we help more people buy. And I think part of this is we just got a demand of our city that, let's figure out how to make this easier. And Badger Institute has actually gone through and looked at if certain legislation is changed. Don't have to go to Madison to change it. Some of this stuff is right here in Milwaukee, that if they would just lift some of it, waive some of it, would make it vastly easier and cheaper for us to be able to put a home back in play. So Byron can be a homeowner. Personalize this so we know, right? So one thing that I wanted to make sure that we're coming to the end, and I wanted to absolutely talk about public transportation. And people have been talking about the bus routes, how many of the bus routes have been eliminated. It's amazing to me that we have a whole group of people who run the bus and a completely different group of people run the hop.
Which is a little puzzling. I mean, Milwaukee County has run transit in Milwaukee for decades, which is great. And they do it at a comparatively reasonable cost. Latest federal figures, it's about $5.50 per ride per passenger.
Yeah.
On the Milwaukee County Transit, and the riders pay some of that. You're paying $2 a ride.
Yeah.
Costs $113 an hour for them to run a bus. Okay, that sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah.
At the same time, for the last 5 years or so, we've had the city running this streetcar downtown, which, okay, it looks nice. Doesn't have a lot of. It looks great from the outside. Doesn't look great from the inside because it's so empty.
Right.
Yeah, it costs about $399 an hour to operate those. Costs $19 a passenger in operating expenses. And no, it doesn't charge any
to go a few
fares.
blocks. This is why I wanted to bring this up, because this is just driving me crazy. The idea that we have told people who are running a bus and they can actually get you to a place for $5. We're eliminating those routes, the $5 routes, to run this other thing that costs you almost $20 a person to run. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. And then it doesn't come up to the north side. It doesn't come to the north side.
The whole justification on the trolley was that it's going to be transformational for downtown or something. I don't get.
It's
quite how it
transformational,
is.
all right.
Yeah, it's and I get where critics will say, well, one's the city, one's the county.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be the city or the county.
Right? Why?
Why
It's the
shouldn't they
same
all be
people. It's a
together?
Milwaukeean here, and he's in the county, and he is in this. Okay, just get your act together and stop. And here's the thing. Here's what was driving me nuts. We're reading in the paper that here's these guys who are. He's not going to have a bus anymore because they're running. Well, why, if we're in crisis, to be able to provide rides for people who need it, like me trying to get out to the car repair shop the other day. So I was taking the Lincoln Avenue bus. If that's such a hard thing to finance, why are we spending all this money on something that runs around downtown and we don't charge anything for?
Yeah. Wait, have you guys ever been on the streetcar? You ever been on the streetcar? Byron, you ever been on the streetcar? Wait, I want the audience to know that they're shaking their heads no. They're not on camera right now, but they're shaking their heads no. So again, this is the whole thing of like, man, how can it be we're spending almost $20 per person, and the thing that runs at $5 per person, we're cutting out routes for those folks? It does not make sense. And then we hired people to run the streetcar when we already had people to run the bus. Why aren't we making it all one system? I know I'm asking all these questions. And so people who answer these kinds of questions are at the Badger Institute. And I know I'm looking, and y'all are don't tell me it's over, right? Right. So
BadgerInstitute.org.
that's where we find it. BadgerInstitute.org.
We've got fresh material every week.
Okay.
Come and read it. And,
Beautiful.
And take part of the conversation.
Okay. Patrick Mcilheran.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you so much for being my guest. And until next week, peace out.